Hello and welcome to another episode of How to Be a Great GM. This is that promised Skype interview that I have been, promising you for the last month that will round out our understanding, hopefully, of how music and sound effects can be used to enhance your role-playing experience. Now, joining me via Skype is Alex from BattleBards.com. Alex, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Been looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Right. So, Alex, what exactly do you do with the BattleBards.com team?
So I kind of fill the roles of executive director and audio director. So if you are logging onto the site and you're using our tools, I had my hand in that. If you're listening to any of our audio, I had my hand in that too. So when it comes to designing the soundboard, the mixer, or the range of functionalities, if you have some ideas, I'm the guy to talk to, since that's kind of stemming from our research and interviews that we've done with gamers such as yourself and your listeners, and my own meandering 20 years experience in using audio and gaming. And on the audio side, I work with over shaping our audio, the types of categories, the types, the specific orchestrations and arrangements for what we're going to cover is stuff that I handle, and probably a lot more, but that kind of gives you the gist.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so you really are the man then when it comes to audio and gaming, which is fantastic. So if I look at the series of questions that I've kind of put together, it's questions that the fans who watch have been asking. It's questions that I myself might have. The very first thing that we want to look at is what makes music, in your opinion, create a certain tone, like perhaps horror or a happy tone or calm kind of tones. What should one look for in music for that?
Yeah, pacing is probably one of the key things that we're looking at when we're trying to establish a certain mood. Usually, for example, if it's going to be a happy tune, you kind of have more or less a quick pace, and the instrumentation that plays into that is going to be an important consideration as well. So if something is uplifting, you're kind of looking at some soft strings, you're looking at some light brass, and you're looking for a certain type of pacing. Usually if it's suspense or horror, pacing is a little sudden, and then you'll have some peaks, and you'll have valleys and peaks in energy, and the instrumentation, of course, also plays a really key role, which you're kind of looking for some of the pluckier strings. You're looking for kind of a deep bass in the undertone, as a little bit of a rumble to set that little bit of anxiety. So it's kind of a mix, I would say, of pacing and the specific use of instrumentation, depending on what specific tone you're trying to set. And there's so many different granular. I mean, in the realm that we work with, BattleBards, we don't look for a specific, just a mood like scary or happy. For us, what we call gaming insight in audio is paramount. It's critical. So when we think scary, the first question that I would go to our talent is, well, scary how? Scary undead? Scary mysterious exploration like an ancient chamber? Scary high octane scary that the roof of a temple just collapsed and the PCs are running out of air. So we go into that level of gaming specific mood, for the lack of a better term. And that's going to dictate the specifics of pacing, instrumentation, and arrangement.
Fantastic. Absolutely. And I mean, what or how do we use that kind of understanding to build a soundtrack library? We've had debates whether you should just run a whole soundtrack from a feature film, whether you should try and compose different folders of different sort of genres or different moods and things. How would we use what you've just described now? How would we use that to create playlists?
Yeah, there's two major schools of thought, and I don't want to sit here and plug BattleBards all day, but it does go into how we created the soundboard, which is very modular. You can populate these playlists any way you want, and that leads into how GMs, at least in our experience working with gamers all over the world, and how typically audio is arranged. And again, there's two schools of thought. Number one, you set up a playlist based on all the audio you're anticipating you will need for that session in order as you anticipate that session will progress. So I'm starting with an intro narrative. I'm going to lead into a city soundscape because my party's going to arrive into a city, and so on and so forth. The other modality is to set up playlists based on thematic zones. For example, I will have my scary playlist. I will have my colloquial happy playlist. I will have my innkeeper voiceover playlist. That way, you can just simply kind of queue that up as the situation presents itself in the game. And before, you weren't really able to do that very well with just having all kinds of different media players and folders. That's too obtrusive. So that's why when you come to BattleBards, you can take a look at our soundboard. You could see how things are arranged where playlists can come up instantly. You have two playlists at once. You can put a lot of tracks out there. So anyways, just reweave to make access to this audio, these playlists, as seamless as possible. Because the last thing you want to do is be obtrusive. So in answer to your question, it's kind of those two methods. Personally, I use a hybrid of both. I like to try to anticipate the audio I'm going to need, but players are players. And how many times have you been thrown a crazy curveball? Say, you know what? We're not going to that city. We're actually going to go take that other road, and we're going to go into the mountains. Like, oh crap, I need a mountain soundscape. And that's where I'll have all my audio arranged to be able to quickly cue that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually going to be looking at that very topic in an upcoming episode where we look at sandbox GMing rather than railroad GMing, and that, of course, will influence our music choice, won't it? So, absolutely right.
That's right.
So when we then look at and this is a very thorny issue at the moment on the channel, if we look at stereotyping, when we look at music, we can describe certain music as being fairly generic. Other music we can say, oh, that's definitely Chinese, or it's definitely Scottish, or it's German, or whatever the case might be. What is it that really allows us to identify pieces of music as coming from a certain area?
Sure. A lot of it just goes into everyone's kind of personal connection into the music that they're exposed to, both culturally and geographically. And pop culture and media has a huge role to play in that. So, for example, I could likely play the theme to Braveheart, which has those iconic bagpipes. And I'm sure the recall for that, that time frame, that culture, that background is going to be almost instant with other folks. So not only can you have this powerful sense of recall culturally, but you could also have it genre-wise. Like there are certain tracks by, obviously John Williams that is very sci-fi, that's very, connected to Star Wars, that also invokes the same thing. Instrumentation is a big role, especially whenever a culture has a very distinct sound. So Scotland's, Scottish using bagpipes for one. A lot of the kind of violin, some of the old Baroque kind of compositions and instrumentation for Western European. For Far Eastern, you have the cymbals and chimes that are very iconic, which we leverage in when we do kind of a cultural, or what we do a racial piece in BattleBards. We leverage that iconic sense of instrumentation, which is super important. So for us, we do try to leverage some real world cultural influences in our work, but what's more is that's racial connotations, and that's actually fun, and it's really challenging because whereas in the real world, I can go on Google and look up, okay, what are some of the classic instruments, or what are some of the most iconic instruments for this culture? Here it's, well, what's the most iconic for dwarves? I mean, there's not as much public material for that. So we have to do a really deep dive, and we do interviews, we do A/B testing, we bring in some influencers in the space and say, what do you think of when you think dwarven music? So it's like deep baritone. It's going to be some heavy vocals. It's going to be ram's horns. It's going to be deep resonating horns. It's going to be a little bit of a Scottish Celtic influence, but not so much on the higher side, on the lower side. So that's the level of research that we do when we're putting one of these racial, cultural pieces together. So like you're saying, leveraging these iconic aspects of composition is absolutely critical when you're thinking elven, dwarven, gnomish, halfling. That's how granular we get into our creative briefs.
And I think the point that you're making there is it really is about doing your homework and doing your research. And I think a lot of the comments that are coming through from the guys is, oh, we really don't want to put in that much effort, or I can't remember all of these different things. It gets to a point where if you want to take your game to the next level, you're going to need to start to understand this kind of stuff and go look for it. So I do find that interesting, and I noticed on some of the tracks that I've listened to from you guys, you kind of got, there's definitely dwarvish stuff there. I think there was some sort of drow or undercity kind of music. Just on a personal sort of note, are you guys planning on releasing more music?
Oh my gosh, we haven't stopped. We're releasing, I think now 3 to 4 albums every 3 weeks, and we always try to include music in every single release. No, we have not stopped, and we don't plan to stop. There is so much ground to cover, music-wise, and we can get into it. There's different types, different categories. No, we're releasing music constantly. In fact, at the time this airs, we're going to have, which I'm super excited about, our monk monastery tracks are going to be hitting. I believe, hopefully I didn't spoil something, but these monk monastery tracks, our artists were able to get, this fusion of fantasy and Far Eastern instruments. Blows a mind. So for the first time, a GM's going to be able to get this narrative, and I think back to the narratives that you set up in these last videos, to get these narratives, and you're going to see these idyllic shrines on a mist-covered mountain that just oozes power and serenity, and our tracks just nail it. I can't wait to get this album out. And I can't wait to hear what guys like you think about it and how you guys use it in game.
Well, it's fantastic, but I was just sort of smiling as you were describing it, because I was going, monk music. Well, do you really want to go with the kind of the cliched Shaolin temple type of big gongs and I don't even know what the name is of those long horns that they use, but there's a part of me going, no, but yes, it's absolutely right, and it will just trigger it instantly in the minds of the guys sitting around the table. So that makes me really excited. It really does. So we've kind of discussed a little bit about it, but how do you guys go about choosing music? Do you kind of say, okay, well, we've got a space for monks, we don't have anything yet for evoker wizards or whatever, or for this race? Is that basically how you kind of go about it?
I try to get everything from people who game, people who use audio in game. So during the Kickstarter campaign, I think about 50 to 75% of our music albums were directly gotten from surveys from guys like you. The thing is, we're gamers. We're not some corporate stuffy office. We're gamers, and to be honest, a lot of the music we could build, the stuff music I want. So I figured, well, there's going to be a lot of other gamers that could really use this stuff too. But we cater to gamers, so I'll put out a survey on Twitter or Facebook during the Kickstarter campaign. It's like, hey, what do you guys want? I've got some ideas. Here are 5 ideas, and the track that gets the most votes wins, and we produce that. And that's how we plan on going forward. So to all of you listening, there's a campaign that you're running, and you want a certain musical score that we don't have, let me know. I'm going to add it to our massive block of audio that we want to get to, and if we can get enough of a following for it, we're going to produce it. So that's kind of part of it. The other part is just kind of taking a look at our current offering, taking a look at what's currently out there, and filling those holes. So one of our first music pieces, the Dwarven Temple, I didn't find any iconic, deep dwarf religious piece, that was oozing Moradin and the Stone Father. And I thought, you know what? This is going to be an iconic piece to really do that gamers are really going to resonate with. So I'll look to fill holes too, but it's driven by our community. It's driven by you guys.
Well, that's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. We have come to the end of this particular session, but don't worry. This is part 1 of part 2, so catch us again next week when we're back with part 2, and we're going to be looking at things like how to use all of this information to make your game just that much better, how we can incorporate it into perhaps online role-playing, as well as some advice from Alex the man himself, who is very, very passionate about music, as passionate perhaps as I am, because we love it. So, until next time, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, drop your comments below. We will put links for BattleBards, of course, up, and go and check them out. They really are cool. Until next week, happy gaming.